You know, in workplaces all across Malaysia, there's this unseen guardian, a person who is legally on the hook for protecting people's lives. Today, we're going to dive into the really crucial regulations that give this person their power. It's a role that's not just important, it's defined by law and backed by some serious expertise.
Seriously, think about it for a second. Picture a super busy factory, or one of those massive construction sites. What is the one thing, that stands between just another day at work and a disaster that could change someone's life forever?
Well, here's the thing. In Malaysia, the answer isn't just, a rule book collecting dust on a shelf or some safety poster on the wall. No way. The responsibility, it's actually embodied by a real person, a specific, highly trained individual who is required by law to be there.
All right, so to really get why this person is so incredibly important, we got to rewind a bit. Let's go back to the beginning. What were the kinds of dangers lurking around that made these rules necessary in the first place?
Okay, so it all kicks off with this really foundational piece of legislation, the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1994, or OSHA 1994 for short. And the whole idea behind this law, the big shift, was to stop reacting to accidents. Instead, the mission became all about proactive hazard prevention. In other words, stopping the bad stuff from happening before it even has a chance.
But a philosophy is one thing, right? It's just an idea. How do you actually make that happen in the real world, on the ground? Well, the law did something clever. It created a specific role. You could call this person our main character, the workplace guardian.
And that person is the Safety and Health Officer, or SHO. Now, the official language calls them a competent person. And trust me, that word competent is key. It means they're the official, qualified expert whose entire job is to make sure the company is following every single safety rule and standard out there.
Now, you're not going to find an SHO in every single small office. The law is smart about this. It specifically targets the high-risk industries, where the dangers are, way more significant. We're talking about places like construction sites, manufacturing plants, and other sectors like that. It also kicks in for any workplace once it gets to a certain size.
This is why I think of them this way. The SHO isn't just some safety cop walking around. They're more like a crucial bridge. They connect the management, the bosses, with the folks actually doing the work on the front lines. They're the ones making sure everybody is speaking the same language when it comes to safety.
So what does a day in the life of an SHO actually look like? Well, it's way more than just carrying a clipboard and pointing out stuff that's wrong. Their mission is actually pretty complex, with a lot of moving parts.
You can pretty much boil it all down to four main things. First, they have to identify hazards. They've got to have the eyes to see potential dangers that most of us would just walk right past. Second, they assess the risks. Okay, so we found a hazard. Is it a tiny problem or a huge threat? Third, they implement control measures to deal with that risk. And finally, and this one might just be the most important of all, they promote a safety culture. This is about getting everyone to think about safety all the time.
And that's the key takeaway here. This job isn't about checking off boxes on a form for some inspector. Nope. The real goal, the ultimate goal of an SHO, is to completely change the mindset of a workplace. It's about making safety a shared value, something that's a priority for every single person, from the top boss all the way down to the person who started yesterday.
Yeah, as you can probably guess, you don't just wake up one morning and decide, hey, I'm going to be an SHO. Becoming a registered officer is a really tough process, and it's designed that way for a reason. They have to make sure only the most competent people are in this incredibly important role. I mean, just look at what it takes. It's definitely not a walk in the park. First, you've got to have the right academic background. Then, you have to complete special training that's approved by DOSH. That's the Department of Occupational Safety and Health. After that, you have to pass a pretty tough exam, and only then can you actually get registered. So yeah, this is not a job you just stumble into.
And get this, it doesn't even stop there. Once you're registered, the learning never ends. SHOs have to take part in something called a Continuous Education Program, or CEP. It's basically a system of nonstop training to make sure they're always up to date on the newest laws, the latest tech, and the best safety practices. In a field like this, you just can't let your knowledge get stale.
Okay, so we've got this super qualified person with a very clear job description. But what makes it all stick? What gives these rules their real power? Well, it all comes down to two words: enforcement and accountability.
The law is super clear about this. The buck stops with the employer.
They are legally required to appoint a qualified SHO in these high-risk industries, and they have to give that person the resources they need to do their job properly. And if they don't, well, the consequences aren't just a higher chance of accidents, we're talking about actual legal penalties.
But it's not a one-way street. That accountability applies to the SHOs too. They're held to a really high professional standard. If an SHO slacks off, neglects their duties, or does something wrong, they can face some pretty serious heat themselves, even getting their registration suspended or completely canceled.
So let's zoom out. After all the rules, all the training, all the enforcement, what's the big picture? What's the whole point of having a safety and health officer in the first place? This quote really nails it. There are two huge benefits here. The first one, obviously, is protecting people, keeping them safe and healthy. That's number one. But it goes beyond that. A safe workplace is also a productive one. Think about it. Fewer accidents mean less downtime, lower costs, and way better morale for everyone.
And the SHO is the one who makes it all happen. They're the catalyst. They're the central person who takes the company on this journey. A journey from just being compliant, barely following the rules, to becoming a place that is truly, deeply, and proactively safe. It's a total transformation.
At the end of the day, even though the SHO is leading the charge, you can't build a real culture of safety without everyone being on board. It might start with that one person, yeah, but it only works if everyone is involved. So that leaves one last question, a question for you. What role are you going to play?